All right, people, welcome to the Time to Grow Up Dad podcast. And today I have got Lily on the show. First and foremost, Lily was super keen. Actually, jumped on the podcast literally like, when did I ask you again? Like Friday. And as of
Yeah.
today, it was Sunday. So literally in 2 days. Um, and kind of off recording, she obviously mentioned that's kind of what parenting is. You just gotta get it done. So thanks for coming on.
All good. Happy.
For know what you do, Lily, maybe give a bit of a rundown of what do you actually do for work, like how do you, yeah, and then we'll kind of kick it off.
Cool. Okay. I am a personal trainer and a coach at Fitstop and 33 Gyms and Hoops. Basically, what I do is I coach classes. So I run a mums and bubs program where the mums can come in and bring their babies and they can work on a workout, whether they include their babies or their young kids. So there's a play area there to keep them entertained, or they can work out with them, which is really cool. Um, yeah, and then at 33, I help manage a women's build and burn program, which is sort of the same, except there we've got a childminding service. So rather than solely
Oh,
working out
cool.
with your babies or alongside your babies, there is a childminder option, which is really cool. And that is all
Oh, nice.
programmed in the name, Women Burn and Build, which is really good.
Yep.
And it's all written up by one of my good friends, Megan, actually, who she's also expecting her first baby, which is really cool.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
yeah, so it's nice and sweet. And I also
Nice.
personal training on the side, so a lot going on, but it's
Cool,
really
cool, cool.
good.
Yeah. How do you juggle all of that with, so first off, how many kids do you have? I think you only have one, yeah?
Yeah, I've
From
got
my
one
understanding.
year old Nova. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So obviously young, 1 year old. How do you juggle
yeah,
all of that and kind of being a personal trainer? And because I've been in that life. Well, I still kind of am personal training a little bit, but it's a pretty hands on job, right? Like you
definitely.
literally can't like carry a baby, and I mean you could with I guess the mums and bubs class, but for the
Yeah.
most part, uh, it is a pretty physical job. How do you kind of juggle all of that with kind of obviously being a mum as well? Because that can't be easy.
I make it sound like it's super easy, but it's really not. My so Nova isn't actually in daycare yet. I am thinking about doing it just so I can obviously take on more than I have at the moment. I'm all about building myself, but I'm
Yep.
also not in that mindset that I need to be able to do that for her. So I am thinking about putting her into
Mm,
daycare a couple times a week just to allow me to grow a bit more and obviously support her and whatnot. It's definitely not
yep.
easy. I have to really manage my time. So early mornings are probably best. When it comes to coaching at Fitstop, because there is that family community and that orientation and the playpen, I am able to have her there while I coach those classes, which is really cool. And I'm actually very blessed that that is an option. Um, in saying that, though, it is not easy. There are times where
No.
she will be a baby because she is one, and she will not necessarily, I don't like saying act up, but she will have her moments as babies do. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you've got to kind of keep between, are people going to think I'm not an attentive mum? Are people going to think random things about me that I don't really necessarily want people thinking? But then you've got the other mindset where you're like, I'm at work, like this is my job. So it does become really difficult at times.
mm,
But you've got to learn ways to manage it, like trying to keep her entertained, making sure her feed times are good, and taking her for a walk before my next shift so that she falls asleep. Like just trying to manage how I manage her to be able to manage my job.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, early mornings are really good. Obviously, I have that support in the early mornings. But yeah, it's not easy, especially having my family live overseas. It is a very tight, supportive community that I have, and I'm really
yeah.
thankful for it.
Wow.
But I have had to place a lot of my dreams and goals on hold. But I guess
Yeah.
that's kind of being a parent as well. You've got to kind of juggle things, and yeah,
Mm. Yeah. So you mentioned you don't have your family are abroad. If you don't mind me asking, does your partner's family also live abroad? Do you get
About to.
support from like? Yeah.
So they're about to
Gotcha.
move. Yeah, they're moving over to Australia as well, like my family have last year. Um, so yeah, it's great.
Nice. Yeah, I think like family support is always like undervalued. I think when it comes to like parenting, especially when they're quite young. Even if someone is a full-time mom, it's still one of those things where it's like it just takes so much off your plate just like for a couple of hours. It's insane.
Definitely. Yeah, it definitely does. And
Yeah.
having them call them and say, "Hey, look, like I've got to do this. Do you mind looking after them?" That has been so helpful. So yeah, it's going to get difficult, but life isn't easy, right? So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So how quickly did you actually? Let me backtrack a little bit then, because I know that in most cases, I say in most cases, and obviously you're not in most cases, when you end up giving birth, at least for most mums, when they do end up giving birth, it's fairly I wouldn't say fairly straightforward, but kind of for the most part, you don't necessarily go under GA. But I actually kind of scrolled through obviously your page and kind of saw actually, let's like, oh shit, like she actually went under GA. And for those who don't know, GA is the abbreviation for general anesthesia, which is basically just go to sleep. Um, how was that experience? Because that would be pretty, like, I would assume, like, even for me, like, that would be mentally like a roller coaster. I can't imagine on the mum's end.
Um, Wow. To be perfectly honest, I'm still not over it. It was definitely
Yeah.
one of those experiences that I wish I didn't have to go through. Um, People talk about their birth plan all the time, thinking, I'm going to have a water birth. It's going to be so peaceful. I've got my music on like Spotify and whatnot. I'm going to have salt lamps and all this kind of shit. And then you get to it and it
Yeah.
doesn't happen that way. It took me a while to
Yeah.
be able to actually talk to people about what happened, my birth story and whatnot, like a long time. And I think
Yeah.
going deep into it, I don't think I've genuinely accepted that that has happened. I kind of just tell the story as it is, but I personally don't feel like
Mm.
I'm over what happened, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. Yeah, it's actually kind of like wild. Obviously, like from where I stand, you're obviously at the end of like literally like if we kind of plot like a graph, obviously you're very much at the outlier. But I think a lot of mums, especially like don't, especially first time mums, that was pretty much us as well. Not that Claire went on the GA, but generally your birth plan doesn't really go to plan. You can have a bird plan, but like of all the people that I talk to, like mums and stuff like that, I'd say like most mums' birth plans, the majority, it kind of goes out the window very quickly. I think as a first time
yeah,
mom, it's
very
definitely
quickly.
something something to just like your midwife will tell you, but I think it's also like just know that it will probably not go according to plan. Just have that
Yeah,
mindset. I think once you get in second time mum might be quite different, but I think with first time mums it's like guys look like it's just understand this. It's your midwife will tell you this and you might say, it'll be fine. Just don't it will more than likely not go according to plan. It's from
yeah, it can turn
the
very
mums that I've spoken to
quickly.
as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty wild. But then
yeah.
obviously Nova was all healthy and all after too.
Yeah. So basically, leading up to my birth, there was a potential that I would go under C-section anyway, not under GA, just a C-section,
Yeah.
because my placenta was sitting very close to my cervix. So obviously, that's a bit of a no-no.
Gotcha. Mm-mm.
So, and she was measuring very small, which I found really hard to take on because I was massive. Yeah, which was
Yeah.
pretty funny at the time. So each week I'd go for a scan just to make sure that she was meeting her guidelines and to see if my placenta would move. And about
Mm.
3 weeks till my due date, they said, look, your placenta has moved. I think it was something like 22 millimeters or whatever away from my cervix, which classed me to be okay to try for natural. And I was all for it. I was like, 100%, let's do it. C-section's off the cards. I'm stoked.
Mm.
So when the day actually came, it was actually a really random day. It was mid-December. I was peak hot. I was sweating my ass off. And I remember just sitting there, and this is kind of really gross, but obviously I was very sweaty. And I texted my midwife and said, look, something just doesn't feel right. And she said, okay, go and get checked out. They obviously did the checks, and it turns out my water broke. And I was like, oh, okay, that explains, yeah.
Why I'm so sweaty.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so they were like, okay. And by that point, it was probably like 10 o'clock at night. So they were like, look, we'll induce you in the morning. And I was like, that's great. But can I please just have some toast and peanut butter? That was my only concern, was that I wanted toast and peanut butter at the time. So they gave me that. And then in the morning, they put me on I don't know the medical term for it, but it's the bag that they attach to you for inducements. They were inducing me through the bag. So I couldn't actually walk around or do anything. I had to stay attached to this monitor.
Yeah, you just stay attached to the monitor, yeah.
Yeah, purely because they didn't know when my waters had broke. So obviously they didn't want to put her in a danger zone. They just needed to get it done really quickly. That lasted for about 17 hours.
Ooh, that's
it was.
long.
Yeah, it was an intense time. Probably about 12 hours into it, her heart started, because obviously my contractions were getting pretty wild at this point. But my body wasn't actually cooperating well. So every time I'd have a contraction, her heart would drop, which is completely normal. That's supposed to happen. But it was doing it a bit too often. And then when we got into 17 hours, it was really funny actually. The last midwife I had is one of my best friends' sister. So it was real random. Yeah. So she came in, looked at the board, looked at me and walked out. And you know that look, something's not right.
I was like, shit.
Yeah, it's like, what are we in for? So the other nurses came in and they took me off it. They gave it a wee while and they tried again. And then I probably had about 5-6 nurses all pile in that room and tell me, look, we're going to go down for a C-section. I was like, okay, this is it. Like, I was out of it, absolutely out of it. This was after I just had an epidural and everything. Bearing in mind the epidural took about 2 hours to get in. So, yeah, it was pretty wild. So we got rushed down. My mum was with us as well. And the look on her face was she was just a ghost. So I kind of said goodbye to her. Went downstairs and they went to give me another epidural because I could only feel pain on one side. So one side had rejected the epidural. So they gave me another shot of that and the same thing. They do spot tests, so they get like a gas canister and towel to feel things. Same thing. And this went on for ages, and they were still monitoring her heart, and they're like, look, like we just have to get her out now. And all I see is them taking out Kyle, my partner, out the room. And I was like, what's going on? And that's all I remember. And I woke up, and then there's this tiny thing on my chest.
It's like, oh, shit, the fuck. GA.
So I feel like they put me through GA, but I feel like it went so quick. I had no time to like register what was going on. I didn't actually know what was going on. And then you kind of, you're like, the like mind hasn't connected with your body, so you're kind of like, is this my child? Like, has this actually just happened? Like, wake up.
I can. I see. I can see that. Yeah, definitely like fucks at your brain a bit. Well, at least the upside is that, at least from what I can see, both of you are obviously all good, well, and healthy, at least,
Yeah,
up to
yeah.
this point now. And
Well,
how,
there was a
how,
she was going to go into NICU. And then when
oh,
she was born, she weighed 2.5 kg, so she just missed it. So she was healthy as, absolutely tiny, but I was very thankful for that, because that was our leading concern was if she's not growing properly, like what, is she going to be an IUGR baby? Is she going to need to go to NICU? Like what is the case here? But as soon as she was born,
yeah,
they're like, no, she's fine. And that was
yeah.
probably my
Out of curiosity, well, not really curiosity. This is kind of out of more like reassuring myself. So context is very important here. Our second one is coming in March, and essentially
oh,
we're sort of being put we're being sort of put under a little bit of a watch because very much like Nova's case, the one that's been baking at the moment is quite small. So, uh, and I know that you mentioned obviously she weighed in at 2.5, like it's kind of obviously missed the whole cutoff. Um, did she, I guess, grow like from a growth perspective post delivery, uh, breastfed? Were you breastfeeding at the
um,
first couple of months?
for a couple days, yeah, she
Yeah.
was rejecting my milk and I wasn't making enough.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Turns out she's actually dairy intolerant, so go figure.
Ooh, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Okay. Did she end up growing up like from a growth chart perspective? Did she grow fairly
very quick.
well, like very quick? Yeah,
Yeah,
that
very
was
quick.
that's kind of something we're hoping with our little one too.
Yeah,
Um, that's what we're being told. So again, fingers crossed.
yeah.
Lock it in, little one.
It's almost like they catch up like very fast.
Yeah.
Obviously, I
Okay.
put her on formula. We put her on goat's milk, and yeah,
Yeah.
she just shot up. I remember seeing the midwife because obviously they come to your home for a couple of weeks,
Mm, mm, mm,
and
mm.
she was just like, "Wow, like she's grown." I was like, "Yeah, she's grown." So
It's the
they do.
food. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. And then how did you kind of so obviously you work with a lot of postpartum women now, and obviously yourself when the got cut open. How was the recovery process like from a I know obviously you already kind of spoke a little bit about the mental health side of things with, one moment you're here, next moment you're like, oh, what the hell's just happened? But was it like how was the process coming back into essentially what you do now? So a year post, right? Yes.
Yeah. It was a bit of a journey, to be fair. I kept up the gym throughout my pregnancy, so I was hoping, that would help me with recovery and whatnot. And then, boom, they threw a C-section on me. But they usually say 6 weeks post recovery, so that means 6 weeks until you go out and start walking and doing all these crazy things.
Mm,
But my mind worked so different. Like I was just like so keen to get back out there and get myself
mm.
back, whatnot. Um, but the recovery, that was tough, man. That was really tough. I had three incidents where I got infections in my wound.
Same with us actually. Well, we did get infected, but it was for Claire, her wound didn't seal up, so it was just still
Mm.
open wound. So we
Yeah,
kept
same
it
here. Yeah,
kept
and then you get like the
yeah
leakage. It was just, it was foul. But yeah,
yeah
not ideal.
yeah
So obviously that kind of prolonged things. Walking and everything, like I was okay. I was just very like annoyed, if you get what I mean. Like I was very just like, man,
yeah
I just want to be able to feel my body. And then you obviously you'd know with your wife as well, like you can't feel your tummy or anything. You just feel so random. And it definitely knocked my confidence a bit with trying to be a new mum because you have to pick her up and you have to feed her and do all these things. But I couldn't even bend down, and it just it messed with me quite a bit.
yeah.
In terms of recovery, though, I feel like with those infections, I could have recovered a bit faster if they didn't happen.
Mm.
I remember going to the doctors at my checkup and saying, look, like I'm ready to go to the gym, like I'm ready to get back into it. And he basically just looked at me like a ghost. He just said, well, it's up to you. And I didn't get really like the medical information
Like
I needed.
the reassurance of like I'm
Yeah,
good or
yeah, like,
whatsoever. It's just like
yeah. There was no internal scan done. There was no him feeling around, making sure it's all good. Like there was nothing
mm,
like that. So I was kind of just going with a limb of like, okay, well, I hope I'm okay. Like, which kind of didn't really put my mind at ease either. So when I did start going to the gym, I was very like cautious and scared. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, so it was kind of just like a massive learning curve. I kind of just took day by day, and just thought, you know, fuck it. In words, I'm just gonna go for it and
yeah,
build my confidence as I go. But yeah, it wasn't easy. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Gotcha. So, did you? Because I know that a lot of women do kind of go through, especially for first child. I think second one's usually a lot. Like I think they most women are a little bit more so like, oh yeah, like this is what I went through. They kind of almost expect it. But in your case, because I understand that even before pregnancy, you were already in the fitness industry, you were already working and stuff, right? And then obviously got pregnant and then came out. Did you? How were there any? I guess a personal question, but did you have any issues with like body image and stuff like that? Especially, I know the
yeah,
recovery process for a lot of women are like, like I'd say like for all the women I've spoken to, it's like everyone has it, and it's almost something that isn't really like it's sort of spoken about, but not really. How did
yeah.
you sort of work
Well,
through
it's
that?
kind of classed as normal, right? Like people think
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
just had a
yeah,
baby. Like that's all I kept getting told was, Lily, you've just had a baby, and I'm like, I know that, but like having someone to just
yeah.
be
No
like,
shit,
I
like
know,
no shit, Sherlock.
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I think I would know if I've got a fucking baby in my arm, but yeah, it was pretty random. But no, definitely. I feel like a lot of women go through this, like you've gone from looking like a certain way and then all of a sudden you're
Mm,
like looking completely different and you've got to get used to that. You've got to get used to your clothes not fitting you. Like you've got to get used to
yeah,
looking different in photos and just everything in general. Like I actually hid for a while. Like I was just like covering myself in fat pants and hoodies just to try and hide my body image because I was so scared of it.
yeah,
It's a massive shock, and no one prepares you for that. Like, obviously, you're going to put on weight during pregnancy. That's inevitable. But no one prepares you for like the image difference. Like looking in the mirror day by day,
mm,
you're not going to see small changes. And then one day you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, like you've really changed. And no one really talks about
yeah,
how to either stop that from happening, which even if that is possible, or how to actually make sure that you're okay mentally. It doesn't really matter about what you look like physically, but that affects you so mentally. Like
yeah,
just by looking at yourself thinking, I'm not that person I was pre-pregnancy, and all that while dealing with a tiny newborn, you're kind of just all over the place, like, so it's
mm,
definitely hard. And I feel like a lot of women go through that. And I don't think there's enough understanding for that, to be fairly honest. When we talk
yeah,
about like prenatal and antenatal classes, I feel like that is one thing that should be spoken about because that affects women's mental health so
mm,
much. It sounds so petty, caring about how you look is how it affects you mentally, but that's life. It does. It's the
yeah,
reality of life. How you look does affect you mentally. If you feel like you look
100%.
good, you're going to feel good. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like especially I know that you obviously work with a lot of mums as well, like postpartum
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Um, do you, or I guess within your clients, within your group training sessions, do you guys sort of talk about this a lot as well? Because I like the way I guess the reason why I ask is because I do remember like call it maybe a generational difference, or maybe it's just sometimes it's literally just a case of like you are not a mum. I do know that a couple of midwives who might not necessarily be mums, like some they're midwives but
Mm,
they're not mums, or some
mm,
midwives are like really old. Like we yeah, and I'm not gonna I don't even remember our midwife's name, but the first midwife that we had, like the postpartum one, she was like from like the old, like we're talking like old, like she's like grandma
yeah.
kind of like vibes, right?
The
And like the
old
shit
point of
she said,
view. Yeah.
yeah, and then the shit she says, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, look, like I'm the dude. Like, I get it. Like, I'm factual. You say it to me. Like, I can process it in my head. But like, fucking hell, mate. Like, surely there's a
Yeah.
better way to like phrase things and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess like, do you sort of bring that up within your own training capacity? Obviously, you being a personal trainer, being a coach within that space? Is that something that you talk a lot with your clients? What do you want? What do you
100%.
generally say? What do you
Yeah.
generally say? Like, obviously, still very fresh into it yourself, but what we usually advise like new mums going through this transition?
Well, 100% we talk about it because we're girls, and we all come from the same path. So all the mums are genuinely at that same point. We've got a lot of new mums with fresh postpartum, which is really cool because obviously we've all learned, and myself, but especially my clients, we've all learned how to deal with certain things different ways and how to share our experiences and support each other. Because every birth story is different, like we were just saying. Every story is different. So when it comes to talking about that, we're very open, like very open. If you actually heard us around the gym, you'd be like, what are they talking about? But no, we're very open, which is great because it builds that supportive community that we actually need. Sometimes it does make me sit there like, man, I feel like men should need this as well, to be able to, just open up and talk about things as much as women do. But no, so we are massively big on supporting each other. We don't bring each other down. There's no need for it. We're all at the same level. We're all new mums. We're all just trying to, some of them have kids as well as their newborns, which is really cool. So they're obviously able to share more experience things. But no, we definitely do all the time. Sharing things like body image, your physical and your mental side of things, or just small little tips on how to like breastfeed or pump or formulas, just anything really. And it's super helpful because it makes mums feel like they're not alone. And that is one thing I found during my postpartum journey, especially in the early days, is I felt so fucking alone. Purely because like people have already had kids or they haven't got any. So to them it was normal, but to me it's like, I've just had a baby, like, hello, help me. I don't know what I'm doing. So it was very, very, fresh. And now when I see a new mum, that's all I can think is like, man, like we've all been there. Yeah. So instead of being that mum that's like, it's normal, you'll get over it. No, like try and be that person's support system because they definitely need it. Like things can go south very quick, especially during postpartum. And again, I feel like that's something that's not spoken about until it's actually too late. So when it comes to my Mums and Bubs program, I'm definitely open to talk about that. There are days where some mums will come in and I can see it. I can see the energy shifted. I can see their face. There's something wrong.
It's like one of those days. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you pick up on it. And some days their kids are just not going to want to enjoy it. They're just not going to want to be there. Their babies are just going to have an off day. And that's when I pick up the pieces where I'm like, okay, you do your workout. I will hold your baby. I will make sure your kid is entertained. And I just tell them what to do and just go and look after their kids because at the end of the day, they're there for them. If that's going to be their 1 hour of freeing their mind, getting rid of all their shit on their plate, then I want to be that support person, because I know how it is. So, yeah, we're massive on support. I feel like if anyone did say anything that put someone else down, I would kind of kick them to the curb. It is my career.
Yeah.
It is my job, but at the end of the day, like I'm trying to, and I've built a massive community where these women feel comfortable to be able to talk about things. I wouldn't want that to change ever.
Yeah, 100%. I think like you said too, with the prenatal and postnatal class, it's funny because I was speaking to another friend who is due next year. I think she's due. I can't remember when she's due. I think she's halfway through her pregnancy. And I said like it's probably a really good idea to go to those like the classes, like the however long, like what was it, like 6 weeks or whatever long that was. And like I was at like the out in St. John's. But anyway, like I basically told her like, oh, it's probably a good thing to go to, but the reality is that it's only really going to be beneficial if your partner goes, because the reality is that for mums, it's like, I mean, I don't know, but like it just feels like that. Like I asked Clay about it, like what she thought about it. It's like honestly, it's like did I learn anything? I learned how to put on a nappy, but I'm sure like everyone will learn how to do that at some point. I feel like those classes are definitely more tailored to. I would say they're more tailored to men, but I feel like the dad or the partner should definitely. Well, the dad definitely should attend it, because I think like one of the things that the lady who took our class is basically saying like the ladies will never retain all this information, it's the dad's job to kind of know the facts because they teach you about the facts and stuff, like in the classes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so like your dad's job is to like absorb and know the facts because like when the lady's in labor or whatever it might be, like yeah,
They're
you're
just gonna go out the
responsible for the decisions. If the decisions is the dad's job. Like at that point, the mum's job's not to make a choice anymore. It's like there will be times where the dad needs to make a choice. So like I
Mm-hmm.
basically told her, it's like, look, like bring dad along. Like it'd be cool to go, but definitely get the dad to attend because yeah, like I just feel like that's something important. But I think to your point too, it's probably quite important to bring those like postpartum things up because everyone says like the prepartum stuff, like the birth and blah 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 blah, take you through the whole process,
I
and
thought
all
it
that
was
kind of
very
stuff.
old
But it's
school.
like, yeah, super. I feel like the curriculum needs to change a little bit, with
Yeah,
that one. Where we
100%.
attended because
They would
you
talk
did
about,
yours last year, and I'll probably have mine done a year and a half. Yeah, so it wouldn't be that
yeah.
long. So it wouldn't be that different anyway.
Honestly, the whole time they were talking us, and they're like, I would change all of this. Like I understand exactly where they're coming from and whatnot, but like I don't know if it was just me, but I just used to sit there going, what? Like this is so old school. This is something that I would have learned back in like my school days. Like I just
Yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah.
think it's necessary. I feel like a lot of people need, like we were saying with midwives, right? I feel like a lot of them need to come together and start thinking, right, this is our generation now. This is how people retain information, and this is what people are thinking and doing. And there's so many new things out there. Like I could go on Instagram right now and type in postpartum workouts. That will give me like a massive thread of different workouts or
Yeah,
meals for my newborn. There are so many different things. And I feel like those classes, don't get me wrong, they're beneficial if you're going to retain that information. Like with me, I didn't retain anything. All I remember seeing is, there's an African hospital and they're breastfeeding their babies and how important it is to breastfeed. That's all I retained. And I'm not meaning that in a horrible way, but that's literally it.
yeah,
I'd sit there and I'd be like, hey, look, like, what are the potentials of a C-section? And I actually remember them saying, we don't really talk about C-sections, which I found beyond words because if you look at the statistics in NZ of who has a C-section, they're actually pretty high. Things can go south very fast. Like,
yeah, yeah.
so when she said we don't really talk about it, I was like, well, can you? Because obviously I thought I was going to have one from the get-go. I was like, I want to know things about it. It's all good asking my mum or whoever's had one before, but I need to know from like a specialist. I just want to make sure that I've got everything in and out covered and whatnot.
And yeah,
No, it was
yeah,
never spoken about. So I kind of felt really left out in that, and a lot of other things that I feel like could have been mentioned. But yeah, it was very, what was the word, mediacore or whatever, however you say it. But
yeah,
yeah, very old school.
yeah. Very, very old school. Yeah, for sure. It's wild, but I mean, I think that's the whole idea as well, right? Like it's ask people with like actual experience, and my
Mm,
gripe with a lot of the, not that it's a bad thing, it's just kind of my personal gripe, particularly I think with like birth planning. It's like just make sure that whoever's doing your birth plan, whoever's a midwife, and I'm sure most mums would do this. I don't speak on behalf of mums because Jesus, I'm not one, but like if you're looking for a midwife, definitely look for a midwife who's at least have a kid. uh,
definitely.
like don't like there are midwives who don't have kids, and hey, all power to them. But just kind of my personal take on it. It's like there's a lot of things in the world where you could ask someone who has theoretical knowledge, which probably can get you a long way. But I think
But
with
experience.
pregnancy and birth, it's probably like you probably want someone who actually has gone through that. Like you probably want that experience, just
I
as a bit of a
agree.
safety net for sure.
Or at
Yeah,
least had some experience around birthing. You know what I mean? Like, not someone who's just done the study and watched the births, because I know they obviously have to give a certain amount of
yeah.
births to be able to obviously qualified and whatnot.
Mm.
But yeah, you definitely want someone who's genuinely been in that situation before, especially if things start to go south, and then they start stressing you out, and you're kind of sat there like, "Am I okay? Is this all right?"
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, definitely agree.
yeah, for sure,
But that's
for
that's
sure.
the same with most things, right? Like you need someone who's experienced in that field to be able to help you get to where you want to be.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. So I asked this to every single guest that has come on, and obviously you and I both are quite new into parenting. At least I think that I'm still very new. I'm sure you are
Yeah.
too. But what's a lesson so far? What's a lesson being a mum thus far into this very demanding job of parenting?
There's a lot of lessons, and I could sit here and talk about them all day because obviously I'm still learning. But I think the biggest lesson I've learned is patience. You've got
Mm,
to be patient. They don't understand what you're saying to them. To be honest, you're just a robot repeating things to them.
yeah, yeah,
When they start to develop certain things, like I remember the first time my baby girl actually laughed, and it like made my whole entire life. Just hearing her laugh.
yeah, yeah. I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah, and you just sit there and you're like, that's the best thing I've ever heard in my life. But then you think how simple a laugh is. They're all learning these new things, and that's why I feel like patience is number one key, like lesson to have. Just take things day by day. If people are trying to tell you, oh, my baby's walking or my baby's on solids, that's great. That's amazing for them.
Yeah,
But your journey is so different. Your baby is going to do things so different. They might do them advanced, they might be slow, but everyone's journey is different. And I feel like that's something else people don't really talk about. I've heard a lot like, oh, what's your baby doing? Or my baby's doing this. And it kind of puts you in a frame of like,
it's
is
like
my baby
comparison. It's like comparison to the thief of joy.
exactly? Yeah. And that's why I mean, like, patience, like, enjoy it day by day. Because even if your baby is behind, there's going to be things that your baby's amazing at that that person's baby probably isn't. Every child is different, every human's different. And that's what I feel like the beauty of it is like having patience to get to know your own child rather than expecting so many things on that child. Like just because like with school, there's like a algorithm, right? Like you have to follow a certain plan. And there are so many kids who are not going to be able to follow that plan. But if you got those other kids on the same brain level as the kids that don't understand it, they wouldn't understand it. So it's the same with babies. Like
Yeah,
just be patient, be understanding, and just enjoy it. Don't like that's one thing I feel like I took for granted was I was so eager to get back to myself that now when I look at photos and I look back at videos that pop up, I'm kind of like, that went fast. That went too fast.
yeah. That one first. That one
And
real quick. Yeah,
yeah. And sometimes I do
yeah,
feel a bit guilty in terms of like, I feel like I focused on getting myself back too quick. And yeah, I did it. But now looking at those photos, I'm like, man, just enjoy it, just enjoy those tiny little moments a bit more because they go so fast. Yeah.
yeah. That's
Mm.
pretty much everything every parent has told me. Well, like every parent will definitely say that like time goes by so quickly.
The biggest thing,
When you yeah, it's like people understand that, but then I think as parents you kind of really understand it a lot more. And kind of having that whole idea of like, yeah, you can go really quick with a lot of things, and you can like, you know, put like sacrifice some time to do other things, and that's obviously like my mantra currently. It's like, you know what, I could probably make less money now, and that's okay. Like at some point he's gonna go to school. They're gonna go to school. They're gonna be
yeah.
out of the house, literally. Like I'm not be able to see them.
It's kind of like
Then
you've got to
I could,
sacrifice a little bit, eh?
yeah, and then you can like then you can go. Now it's like, yeah, sure. We have to hunker down. There's certain things that we might not be able to do. Traveling's a little bit limited, but at some point they're gonna have to go to school. Well, at least primary,
Exactly.
bare minimum, go to primary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like it's a few years of like them not being in the house 5 days a week. And then you can kind of hustle and grind there and then. But for now, it's like do your best to like enjoy those moments for sure.
Definitely. And that's another
Yeah.
thing that just goes too fast. Is like people expect you to just bounce to it so quickly. Like, oh, have you started working yet? Or what's your plan to put them in daycare? And it's like, this is me. This is my mom. Like, I
It's like,
am a mom. This is my journey. Like, if you did that, that's amazing. And, I praise you. That's great. But like, we're all different. Like, I do not want to do what you do. So it's just like,
yeah.
I feel like I did post a reel about this saying the other day, like your shoulds are probably not that mum's shoulds. Like we're all different. We've all got different needs.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, if people would like to get help from you, because I know you do some in-person training, do you do some online? Do you do online training as well? Like, do you do on the sort of online programming for sort of postpartum
Yeah,
moms and stuff like that? Yes,
sure.
sweet. So,
Yeah.
um, obviously, you and I probably we are in this region for context. We in New Zealand, kind of in the North Shore. That's kind of where we both are based at. But where can people find you? How can people get help? Particularly, I think a lot of postpartum mums, I think, definitely will appreciate that. So far away, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram under postpartum underscore powerhouse. So yeah, I pretty much post on it every single day. If I don't, there's something wrong. No, it's probably just me having like a little day. But yeah, that's the best place to find me. Always got my DMs on open. As you would know, Chong, straight into it, straight away. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's probably the best bet to hit me up on. But yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Well, thanks for coming on, Lily. For those who did tune in, hope you enjoyed the episode. And as always, Levin, thank you for all the support that you guys are doing for these ones, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for your
Thanks
time.
for having me.